Hello everyone, welcome back to Microsoft Flight Simulator, and welcome to the Bell 407 helicopter. A first for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Helicopters, native. We've had many mods before, but this is the first native helicopter, and I am so excited to share it with you guys today. We're going to be doing our usual, looking at textures, getting the aircraft started up, taking a look at the advanced flight model. It comes default, so does the C2 helicopter, with a default flight model, which is bland and boring. We're going to be looking at the advanced flight model for more of a challenge. Doing a flight here around the beautiful, beautiful New York City Times scenery that we have here. And then we'll close it out. So without further ado, let's begin. So before we actually jump into textures, I do want to go over the flight model for this helicopter, as well as the C2. And there's actually a setting you have to change in the sim. And I almost wish this was kind of like a pop-up message for enthusiast simmers like myself. Because when I was first flying this aircraft, my first impressions was it felt like there was just an autopilot auto-centering everything for me and bringing the helicopter to a perfect start. That's because there was. You have to go into your, not general, assistance options, and under the piloting tab down here, we have two options for helicopters. You have assisted cyclic, which is your control stick, and assisted tail rotor, which is obviously your rudder, or in the case of helicopters, anti-torque pedals. I've got both of those off. There's also a new tow plane takeoff assistance. We'll look at that when we get into the gliders, but I have that off as well. So if you want a more realistic experience, that's where you're going to want to go. But let's look at the textures. We've got this really nice, cool, funky red and gold livery today that I'm digging. And I'd say textures are right in the middle, kind of right where you would expect them to be for a default Asobo aircraft. Obviously our landing light there, forward and bottom, the textures are a little bit rough. At a distance they look okay, so like if you come out to here they look okay, but you get up close, it's very obvious that it's just a 2D JPEG layered on top. Same thing with the riveting around the landing lights, not the best. Our taxi lights are a similar story. It's that same 2D JPEG from the forward-facing landing light. Lighting is a very, very big thing for immersion for me, I know. Overall, again, textures just kind of sticking in the mid-range. They're just pretty mid, if you will. You know, that keyhole really lacking some detail there. Same thing with the door handle. Even at a reasonable distance like this, you can kind of see it's a little bit gummed up. Skids again, not looking bad by any stretch of the imagination, but they could use that extra bit of polish and crispness that we like to see in our high fidelity models. Nice marking on the fuel vent. Texture's a little bit blurry, as well as the these are supposed to be round. They are a polygon. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. They are a pentagon shape. Coming up to, we'll get to that main rotor head in just a bit. Got this nice shroud over the transmission shaft going from your engine to your rear tail rotor. Everything nicely shrouded in there, and then obviously we've got the tail rotor out here free spinning a little bit. It does look like there's some nice leading edge, some nice leading edge detail as far as like pitting and that sort of thing. One thing I do really love, and I remember this from the old, I think it was the 206 Jet Ranger that we had in the older flight sims, you can actually actuate your anti-torque pedals and you can see the pitch of the tail rotor change in real time, which is very cool. I like little details like that. Moving around to our horizontal and subvertical stabilizer here. Again, same story with the taxi lights up front. That fixture for the nav and strobes just looking a little bit rough when you get up close. Even from this distance with the sun on it there, you can kind of see the housing around it where it's mounted up. Just looks a little bit funky. And we'll get the sun out of the shot here, and it's a similar story. Again, not bad by any stretch of the imagination, just lacking that little extra bit of pizzazz, if you will. Non-legible data tag there. Fuel system warning. It's an interesting fueling spot for the Ford, so it's literally right behind the passenger seat here. How does that... Interesting. So air intake there. We'll actually go to the sunny side of the aircraft for this. Can we see into our intakes? Kind of. Let's do a quick slew mode here. And we're going to rotate the aircraft into the sun. There we go. Blind our pilots briefly. So there's a nice kind of lower texture mesh for that one intake, and then the other one is just a wall. Matches the color of the aircraft. Let's look at that main rotor mast and our swash plate. That's looking pretty dang good if you ask me. Not the highest textures, but the detail factor in there is pretty nice. You can actually see a continuation of this texture here across the entire back plane. Oh, I think you mean rudder. Across the entire back plane there. Not sure if the actual 407 is designed that way or if that's just how this one was done for simplicity. Either way, it's not that big of a deal. Big ol' exhaust for our turboshaft engine. We'll spin the aircraft one more time so that the tail is facing the sun. Let's see what we can see in there. So it's just a flat texture once you get just a little ways in. So again, not a huge deal. No deal breakers for the most part. We'll get the aircraft spun back around the orientation we had in before, and then look at our interior. Alright, so looking at the interior of our Bell 407 now, as a Staten Island ferry comes into dock, probably getting destroyed by this cruise ship here. I don't know, he's got super maneuverability. I didn't realize there was an F-22 strapped on there. Anyway, textures on the Bell 407, they're good. Not outstanding. I mean, so obviously your main instruments all look fine. If I turn on our main battery here, I can show you our annunciator panel. Looks okay. I will go high brightness. Where is that? That's there. So there's high brightness on the annunciator panel. And then low brightness. Oh, I don't know what I just toggled. On the brightness switch, that was the cabin switch. There's low brightness. And you can adjust the cockpit lighting, or the instrumentation lighting, I should say. So there's off for the instruments, and then we can dial them up to obnoxiously bright, to the point where you can't see your artificial horizon. And somewhere in between is probably where we will fly today. Right there. Almost completely off. So that's probably a high brightness setting there. We're going to turn off the master battery though, because that's a little bit annoying, and we'll continue taking a look around the cockpit here. Obviously we've got a nice GNS 530 GPS, standard radio, ADF, and transponder stack up in our audio panel down below. On our collective here, we've got our taxi light, landing light, engine starter switch, and obviously our throttle in the aft section. On our cyclic, we've got a force trim switch, and a, that's about it. This is your actual trim hat. I'm not sure what this button or that one does on the 406. But all in all, the detail looks pretty good. As far as I know, there's not a way to actually open the doors, but you do have these cool little windows that you can play around with. We'll do a quick audio escape for you guys, so I'll shut up for a second, actuate some of the controls and the switches, and let you guys take a listen. So, all in all, I'd give the soundscape a pretty high rating. We'll take a look at the rear section of the aircraft now. Go back into the rear passenger cabin. Not a whole lot to report here, just some kind of roughish textures, a nice warning not to walk into the tail rotor, seatbelt signs, intercoms. And the same thing over here, soft goods only. I'm assuming your fuel cell's literally right here, because outside of the aircraft, there's literally a fuel filler neck right there we saw. But let's go ahead, get started up, and get our tour of New York underway. Alright, we'll wound the time a little bit. I want to do a sunset flight, not a post-sunset flight, so we backed up the time a little bit, but that's okay. Starting the 407 is remarkably easy. We're going to go over to our main battery switch and get all that beeping nonsense going again. And then I'm going to turn on our external lighting and our auto trim, our hydraulics. Particle separator can stay off, anti-ice can stay off, pitot heat can stay off, defog can stay off, position lights are on, cabin light, that can go on. That can go on. Heaters and AC can stay off. Gyros are in the on condition. That should be about it. I'm going to get our little rear light here lit up and pointed at our switches there so we can kind of see what they are. Check outside for lighting. So we have our nav lights and our beacon and strobes going. I'm going to turn off the strobes till we get started. So we got twin beacons underneath flashing. A very nice lighting suite on this aircraft, if I do say so myself. Not the hugest fan of the kind of twinkle effect on the nav lights, but I'll take what I can get. The beacons look good. The landing lights and taxi lights look good. So I'm going to come to our fuel valve, turn that on, and we'll guard it. And the startup procedure, again, very simple. We're going to go ahead and hit our starter, and then move our throttle switch to idle. And then we're going to be watching our main generator, turbine, and our NG as we do start. So here we go. Just kidding. I didn't move that to idle first. Idle, and now start. And we should see some acceleration on our NG. Briefly, it'll light off here. Let's hit around 50-ish%. Hang, and then it should light. There it is. We'll disengage our starter. Should be good there. Okay, let everything stabilize out there. Wait for our temps to come down, then we'll advance to 80%. Why is there no sound? Strange. So now you can see our rotor RPM coming up. This light should extinguish momentarily once we hit our green arc. Right here. There we go. And EGT's falling off. Wait for our NG to stabilize out. But nonetheless, a successful start. I'm a huge fan of the soundscape on this aircraft. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So we're going to turn on all of our forward lighting. So we've got those two lights in the center, as well as our lights either side. So if it's not bright, then you're not doing it right. Alright, I'm going to do one more adjustment on our... Why can't I move my head? What's going on, Flight Sim? Okay, pedal stop. Double check everything else is good. We're going to turn on our pitot heat, canopy defog, anti-ice can stay off. I wish the pulse lighting worked. It does not as of now. What can you do? Turn down the sky just a little bit. That's up. A little bit down. And we should be good for our first takeoff. Cyclic is centered. Confirmed. And we'll go for the first takeoff. So I'm going to apply a little bit of anti-torque pedal just to keep us stabilized as we increase our collective here. That's way too much anti-torque pedal on my part. Okay, we're sailing. Wow, we're really nose heavy. Sorry, nose aft trim. I guess I should have checked that before taking off. And this is part of where the sensation of flying is lacking. You know, if you were in a real helicopter, you could kind of feel the aircraft wanting to lurch aft. See if we can't try that again. I'm trimming the aircraft out now. Let's see if we can't try for a more respectable takeoff. All in all, I've heard a lot of complaints about the new model for handling and how some folks say it's impossible. It's definitely difficult. I would call it far from impossible. When I think impossible to fly helos, I think like the Gazelle in DCS before you set custom curves. This is just challenging. I wouldn't call it difficult by any stretch, but to each their own. I'm definitely not a accredited rotary pilot, so do expect some hiccups here and there. But we'll do a quick overflight in New York, and we'll come back and try that landing again later. I don't think I'm quite up to snuff for it here. Obviously not following any realistic flight rules today. We're just in it for the sights. Going up on the Freedom Tower here. Can't think any buildings that would have helipads on them. Oh yeah, I failed to mention. So if you go underneath the aircraft where there's rotor wash, you actually get like a rotor washy sound effect. It's very cool. It's very, very cool. I have noticed the tendency for the aircraft to kind of wane left and right. It almost like wants to do a Dutch roll, if you know what that is. With a standard set, so I'll put in the same amount of anti-torque pedals, and it kind of just wants to Dutch roll on its own. So it's not perfect, but I mean, it's good enough to the point where, you know, doing a scenic flight over New York City or something like this would be more than fine in my eyes. I do wish Asobo's autogen was a little bit better, but maybe that'll come with the 50th anniversary update. Alright, let's cut back towards that helipad. We'll try for a landing here, because I don't want to drag this video out any longer than it needs to be. I definitely could see getting some long-term use out of this compared to a lot of the other aircraft, which are more of novelties, if you will. Obviously, they're appreciated, but, you know, I'm not going to be taking the Wright Flyer on any long-range flights, whereas this I could see doing, you know, a flight, you know, up to Everest or something like that. Definitely can see myself getting a lot of mileage out of this helo, which is good for a default Asobo aircraft. A lot of, the aircraft that were initially delivered, or even the ones that came with the deluxe upgrade, were just kind of loosely polished, sort of bland models, if you will. So I am kind of happy to see Asobo and Microsoft taking already made product, paying the devs out for it, and then just putting it in the sim for all of us. Alright, I can tell this is already not going to go great, but we're going to commit anyway, because it's a simulator. That's what simulators are for. Oh, we're short. Coming around. Still short. Don't touch down yet. But I almost had it too, eh? Ground effect is interesting. It's not nearly as I understand it to work in helicopters. I've never flown helicopters, but I know a few helicopter pilots. And the way they explain ground effect is very similar to what we see in the fixed-wing world. But nonetheless, that is just a quick look at the Bell 407. I keep wanting to call it like a 207. Bell 407. Probably it's top two. It's between this and the A310 for my favorite new additions to the sim. What do you guys think of it? Are you gonna give it a shot in the more difficult advanced mode like I've been doing? Or are you gonna stick with the more easy to fly and casual mode? No shame in either one. I know I'll definitely be sticking with the more difficult version. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video, you guys. I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching this one. And as always, take it easy.